In this video, I will be talking about risk assessments and how they are currently used in our criminal justice system and how they are perceived by the public. So, a criminal risk assessment is an algorithm that is fed by data, usually around 40 to 120 data points, all based around an individual. In modern times, this includes dynamic factors, which are the dynamic factors come from interviews, and those dynamic factors are also called criminogenic factors, and those are related to the individual's perception of themselves and of others, how they feel about crime and how they feel about their role in creating that crime. So the algorithms really are quite simple in their results. The issue is in the actual numbers and the actual data and how it's all compiled, and that is actually an opaque process. That process is considered a black box, and that process is one that makes a lot of people skeptical of criminal risk assessments and their application to human beings. And the biggest issue with this opacity is that real people's lives are at stake. Any type of time spent in prison can really mess up someone's chances. They could be missing out on time with their family. They could be missing out on time with maybe working a job, or they could miss out on job prospects from being in prison. And it's really a serious situation, and so leaving it in the hands of an algorithm created by scientists, by statisticians and actuarians, it's really a decision that I understand the skeptics about. So with the criminal risk assessments having such a big effect on something that's really important, on the freedom of an individual, whether they're placed in jail or not, whether a juvenile gets placed into an institution, these are all very important. But we need to understand is that the criminal justice system, as it has currently been in the United States for the past 100 years, even longer than that, it hasn't been working very well for minorities. And the criminal risk assessments, these risk assessments actually present an opportunity to reform an old system, to actually improve the system. And that's what is very important about this, is while it is new and while it is relatively unknown, compared to the alternative of the criminal risk assessments, which is solely using human, professional feeling and intuition and all the schooling that they've had, all the training they've had, and only using that. That's how it's been done for a very long time in this country, but as we've seen, that really hasn't worked in this country. So the criminal risk assessments actually provide an opportunity to reform this system, reform the mass incarceration, to keep more people out of prison. And so this video will be about dispelling a lot of the myths relating to criminal risk assessments and explaining the positive results, because that's a big issue, is people do not know. There are too many misunderstandings relating to criminal risk assessments. So the first major issue involving criminal risk assessments is that many people believe that humans are better than criminal risk assessments, and that's really an issue that is not very founded in the results and the actual accuracy of the predictions compared to humans and the criminal risk assessments, the algorithms, all of the data. You look at the data and it pretty much shows that the accuracy of the criminal risk assessments is noticeably higher. And I'm not going to get into the jargon of it because there is a lot of jargon relating to the effectiveness of the criminal risk assessments. There are standards within this field that are pretty specific and complex. They require the schooling, obviously, that a lot of these researchers have. So I'm not going to bog down this video with the jargon, but the major takeaway is that within these standards, and they are standards that have been constantly validated in this field, that the criminal risk assessments have always proven to be more accurate recently than the human professional counterparts. And given this greater accuracy, the criminal risk assessments are the better option. They can help alleviate a lot of these inaccuracies. And when we're talking about the freedom of a human, the freedom of a person, I mean, these sending someone to jail or not offering somebody probation can have very significant adverse effects on one's life. And also, the algorithms do not rely on subjective intuition and instinct. They rely on standards within their protocols that can be easily measured and shared between different algorithms and researchers. So this allows for better measurement of effectiveness and allows for uniformity, and it necessarily includes a formal process for deciding these outcomes. The human scientists use informal, instinctual, and intuitive decision-making processes, and those can be prone to failure. So that's really the main issue with the argument that humans are more effective than the risk assessment tools. And the next main issue is that the risk assessment tools are locking up more people, are sending more people to jail than the humans are, than normal people are. And this is also a myth. This is mainly a myth due to the fact that risk assessment tools have not actually always been used for pre-sentence reasons. Usually they're used for post-adjudication, after the sentence has been handed down by the judge. Then, if the person receives probation, the risk assessment tool can take all the factors and decide whether to provide an alternative service, to give a risk score, a low, medium, or high risk score. And side note, but that risk score is not a certain prediction, it is a range of values. So a low risk score is a wide range of numbers. Even if the score is just giving a single number, it still represents a range of possible outcomes. The algorithms do not give a definitive answer. They're always giving a general answer, a very general one. And so going back to the probation use, the algorithms do a very good job of taking in the data, only the relevant data, not using irrelevant data, which humans are prone to doing, but using the relevant data on the question of future criminality for someone under probation to commit a crime in the future. The algorithms do a better job at deciding, using those scores, at deciding whether someone will commit a crime in the future. And also the algorithms, they are more effective in deciding what is the best path for intervention in order to stop the person from reoffending. And so by using these risk scores, probation offices can actually tailor their resources, all of their workers, all of their alternative outcomes. They can actually tailor those to the people who need it most. So it's actually a more effective system. And so not only do the risk assessment tools lead to less crime happening in the future for the probation people, it actually has less crime for those pre-sentence, for the pre-sentence decisions. And so this is relatively new, but there have been a handful of states and then some other counties and other specific areas of other states, but 4 states have implemented this and had positive results. Many states today actually have actually use pre-sentencing algorithms to help judges decide on sentences. But 4 states have had very good results, very proven results, and that's Utah, Virginia, Nebraska, and Kentucky. And so these states are really leading the way. And there are other smaller counties and jurisdictions which are also having proven success with these algorithms pre-sentencing that have helped reduce prison and reduce the amount of people going to prison, which is very important. If freedom is the main goal, then these algorithms are being shown to succeed in many studies. And these people, the people who create these studies, are very smart individuals. They know what the data is doing. They've spent their careers doing this. And so when these studies come out, and these are very large meta studies, and there have been many done, to disagree with that data would require a lot. There would be a lot of effort that would have to be put in, a lot of research that would need to be dispelled. There's a very good base of research on the effectiveness of these algorithms. And so the final argument, and this is arguably the most popular one, especially today, and that is that these instruments, these risk assessment tools, are enshrining racism into the criminal justice system. And this is very important, especially in our time of racial division, kind of an awakening of racial issues in this country. So with the algorithms and the racial bias within the decision-making process, there's a lot of fear there. I understand why there is a lot of fear, given that the criminal justice system as a whole has always had a racial bias and continues to this day to have one. But the introduction of these risk assessment tools actually counters the past history of racial bias. And there have been some studies, some research done by ProPublica. They had a very popular article that was actually incorrect. And that's a very big issue. We cannot have incorrect research coming out. I understand the need to challenge the data and always be questioning it, always be skeptical, but to have research out there that is just wrong is very dangerous when reform is needed now, when these risk assessments can actually lead to more people not being put into the prison system, to less people being put in jail. That's very important. So the risk assessment tools have actually been found to not be racist, and there have been many meta studies done specifically on this issue because the researchers, the scientists in this field understand how big of an issue that this is in this country and in this system. So they have made a concerted effort to not have racial bias in their systems. And so there are numerous meta studies, and these are what's really important, is that these risk assessments just have been proven to have similar outcomes regardless of the race of the individual, whether they're white or whether they're black. And also, most, if not all, of the criminal risk assessment tools do not include race in their decision making. There are other data points that they use, such as arrest rate, which is racially biased because black people are arrested more than white people in this country. And so these risk assessment tools are not perfect. They still must be validated. There have been times where a risk assessment tool is implemented into a community and it is not validated effectively. So there is racial bias showing at times. But once they do get validated and they are tested, and most of them are rigorously tested and validated, there is usually no racial bias present. And in conclusion, really, the solution to this problem of the risk assessment tools is they're already here, they're already being implemented. A lot of people just don't know about them. And that's really the main issue, is that we need people who are willing to learn about this issue, who are willing to not just read surface level, not just take other people's words for it, but to go to the researchers, to the experts, look at their articles, and actually read what these algorithms are, because it is very important. If somebody says that these risk assessment tools cannot be trusted, they need to be questioned. We need to be skeptical of that person. If they do have research that's correct and that's validated, then we can accept it. But misinformation can be spread very easily, and the best remedy to this solution is better public knowledge of risk assessment tools and what they are.